Hello and welcome. You're watching Today in Parliament with me, Aishwarya, and here are the Parliament headlines. Second part of budget session of Parliament to resume today. Passage of Finance Bill 2020 on government's priority. Session to conclude on 3rd of April. Rajya Sabha to take up a Central Sanskrit Universities Bill, National Commission for Indian System of Medicine Bill and National Commission for Homeopathy Bill. Lok Sabha slated to take up Direct Tax Vivad Se Vishwas Bill and Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill, Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020 to be introduced in the lower house. The second half of the budget session starts today. The budget session of Parliament began on 31st of January with the address of President Ram Nath Kovind to the joint sitting of both houses. The government's legislative agenda for the budget session includes nearly 45 bills and 7 financial items. It broke for recess on 11th of February to allow parliamentary standing committees to examine the budgetary demands for various ministries made in the Union Budget 2020-21. The session will conclude on 3rd of April.
सेशन का जो दूसरा सत्र है वो मुख्यतः बजट के लिए किया जाता है और आपको मालूम है कि ये जो हमारा बीच का पीरियड था, इस पीरियड में जितनी भी विभागों की स्टैंडिंग कमेटीज़ हैं उन्होंने इस विभाग की स्टैंडिंग कमेटीज़ पर चर्चा की है, उनकी रिपोर्ट्स सबमिट हो रही हैं होंगी और उसके आधार पर लोकसभा और फिर राज्यसभा में जो बजट है और जो फाइनेंस बिल है उसको पारित किया जाएगा.
And now let's take a look at the legislative business in both houses of Parliament. The Rajya Sabha will take up 3 bills for consideration and passing. Now these include the Central Sanskrit Universities Bill 2019, which will be moved for consideration and passing by Union Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank. This bill aims to establish and incorporate universities for teaching and research in Sanskrit and also to develop all-inclusive Sanskrit promotional activities. The National Commission for Indian System of Medicine Bill 2019 will also be moved. This will be moved by Minister Shripad Yesso Nayak. This bill aims to provide for a medical education system that improves access to quality and affordable medical education. It also aims to promote equitable and universal health care that makes medical services accessible to all citizens of the country. And Shripad Yesso Nayak will also move the National Commission for Homeopathy Bill 2019, which is aimed to ensure availability of adequate and high-quality homeopathy medical professionals. And Lok Sabha also is slated to take up a number of bills today. These include the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020 to amend the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 to be introduced by Union Minister Dr. Harshvardhan. And Minister Prahlad Joshi will move the Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020 for introduction, which is aimed to amend the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1957 and the Coal Mines Special Provisions Act 2015. The Direct Tax Vivad Se Vishwas Bill 2020 is also listed for consideration and passage in the Lok Sabha. And also listed for consideration and passing is the Aircraft Amendment Bill 2020, which amends the Aircraft Act 1934. And this will be moved by Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri. All right, our colleague Kriti Mishra is now joining us live from Parliament. Kriti, talking about the second half of the budget sessions, which starts today, there are a number of bills that have been hanging fire. In the entire budget session, we understand that close to 45 bills are to be considered and moved. What can we expect as far as the second half of the budget session is concerned?
Well, absolutely, Aishwarya. The very important second half of the budget session commences today. And you may recall that in the first half, we saw a fairly productive session of both houses of parliament. In fact, in the Rajya Sabha, the productivity was recorded over 96%. And in first of its kind analysis that was conducted by Rajya Sabha Secretariat, it was shown fair play in the Rajya Sabha, wherein several members got various opportunities under various windows to raise several issues. So, in fact, in this part of the second half of the budget session, we expect that important bills would be taken up, an important legislative agenda would be taken up in both houses of parliament. Talking about today's agenda, of course, in the Rajya Sabha, important bills are lined up, including the Central Sanskrit Universities Bill and also the National Commission for Indian System of Medicine and also the National Commission for Homeopathy Bill 2019 would be taken up for discussion. So these are the important bills that are lined up in the Rajya Sabha. And talking about Lok Sabha, as you've mentioned, important bills are lined up there as well. And a very important bill, which is Vivad Se Vishwas scheme that was announced by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in this year's budget would be taken up today. Remember, official amendments have been moved to this particular bill, including the DRT and also the seizure and search in cases of more than around 5 crore. That is also an amendment that is moved. So that would be taken up in the Lok Sabha today. Aishwarya?
Kriti, if you could elaborate a little bit and tell us more about, especially if we talk about the bills in the Lok Sabha, there are very important bills that are listed for introduction, especially when we talk about the medical termination of pregnancy amendment bill, that obviously seeks to extend the termination of period, the pregnancy period from 20 weeks to 24 weeks, which is of course very, very important bill. And there is also the mineral laws amendment bill. And of course, you were talking about the direct tax Vivad Se Vishwas bill. The finance minister had mentioned about this scheme in her budget speech this year. And of course, that is a very important bill. So tell us more about these bills, especially the ones that are there in the Lok Sabha today.
Well, absolutely. As you've mentioned, the direct taxes Vivad Se Vishwas scheme that was mentioned by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in this year's budget. Remember, more than 9 lakh crore rupees that is logged in various litigations pertaining to direct taxes in various tribunals, the High Court and the Supreme Court. So this is like an amnesty scheme that will be provided for settling these claims. And also it is expected that more than 4,85,000 cases are there. So this is a big movement, a big move in terms of, removing these litigations. And also, as you've mentioned, other important bills, that is the medical termination of pregnancy amendment bill that would enhance the time period given for abortion actually. And also another important bill, which is the aircraft amendment bill, in order to enhance the safety standards of India's civil aviation sector and also to ensure that there's better efficacy of various departments, including the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, and also the Aircraft Accident Investigation Agency. So this is another important bill that will be taken up in the Lok Sabha today. Aishwarya?
All right, Kriti, thank you so much for giving us the details of the entire legislative business in both houses of parliament. And in some other business in the upper house, following ministers will lay papers pertaining to their ministries today. Let's take a look at some of them. Prahlad Joshi for the Ministry of Mines. Kiran Rijiju for the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Arjun Ram Meghwal for the Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises. Babul Supriyo for the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. Ratan Lal Kataria for the Ministry of Jal Shakti. And Pratap Chandra Sarangi for the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. And Union Minister Dr. Harshvardhan will also move the motion for the election of members to AIIMS at Gorakhpur, Bhatinda, Guwahati, Bilaspur, Deoghar, Vijaypur and Rajkot and Biblinagar. And also, members Motilal Vora and Ashok Siddharth will present the department-related Parliamentary Standing Committee on Railways on demands for grants 2020-21 for the Ministry of Railways. The House will also pay obituary reference today to former member A.V. Swamy. And following ministers will lay papers on the table in the Lok Sabha today. Dharmendra Pradhan for the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Santosh Kumar Gangwar for the Ministry of Labour and Employment, Anurag Thakur for the Ministry of Finance, and members Radha Mohan Singh and Sunil Kumar Mondal will present the Standing Committee report on Railways on demands for grants 2020-21 for the Ministry of Railways. Members will also move several motions for election to the committees. These include the motion for the election of members of the Committee on Public Accounts, motion for the election of members of the Committee on Public Undertakings, and also motion for the election of the members to the Committee on the Welfare of Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes. And with that, we wrap up this edition of Today in Parliament. Do stay tuned. The proceedings of the Upper House are going to begin in a short while from now. Thanks so much for your time.